Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Deborah Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Dana Shrager, founder of danastable.com and group leader of the Jewish Cooking Facebook group. Welcome. Great to see you, Dana.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks so much for having me.
So, you love food and Jewish food, but a lot of other people do too. So, what is it that people love so much about Jewish food?
I think for many people, Jewish food is very nostalgic. It reminds them of childhood, their grandma's cooking. And for people who didn't grow up with it, a lot of people talk about how they just fell in love with it, that somebody introduced them to the flavors, maybe at someone's house, maybe a food tour in New York, and that they enjoy the flavors and that they want to recreate food that they enjoy.
And so, where did your love of food come from?
That's a great question. I grew up in a very foodie household. My mother was an amazing cook. She was very well known for her dishes within her wider social circle, and people constantly asked her for recipes. And as I got older, I wanted to make those recipes too. I also had my grandma and my aunts, my cousins all made this repertoire of family recipes. And so when I got married, I wanted to be able to make these recipes too. So I went and I asked the older relatives for their recipes, and I got very little information. I got a list of ingredients, not necessarily complete, very few measurements, and pretty much no directions other than cook for 1 hour at 350. Everything is 1 hour at 350. And so I was very perplexed by this. And I said, I can't make food like this. So, with so little direction. So I started doing research, looking in pre internet, looking in cookbooks, trying to take the flavors that I remembered and that were listed on these note cards I had written and make a more precise recipes by following examples in cookbooks. So that was the start of my recipe development.
And so now you lead these groups, and what you're doing is filtering questions from people who want you're basically the solution that you wish you had, right?
Exactly. So on Facebook, I run the Jewish cooking group, and people come into the group and do several things. First of all, the most common reason people join the group is because they're trying to recreate grandma's recipes and they don't have them. They're very sad that they did not get grandma's recipe. So they're coming in the group hoping somebody else's grandma will give them recipes that are like their grandma's recipes. So that's a big reason people come. People also come in the group because maybe they're converting or they're foodies. So people come in the group with their questions. People also come in the group with the troubles they run into in the kitchen. They say, my brisket isn't soft, my matzo balls fell apart, I want a kugel, but I want it a certain way. And so I answer people's questions, I share my recipes, but there's a whole team of experienced home cooks in the group ready to answer anyone's question.
Well, and I would say people love food on Facebook pre-pandemic, but now it's like blown up considerably. It's like everybody, even people who didn't realize they loved food, realized they love food, right? Because that was the best hobby when everybody was sheltering, right?
The groups exploded during Facebook. I could barely keep up with the requests for people to join the group.
So, what would be? Can you give me a good example of a food that people want variations of? Do you have something that's common?
Um, there's a real big range. There are a lot of people in the group are from the US, so we get a lot of Ashkenazi Jewish food questions, but there are people in the group for all over the world, which is really great when people share from all over. We've had some people sharing recently from South Africa, from Paris. I know people in the group are from Italy. People are from South America, Canada. People come from all over the globe in the group. So that's really exciting. And some people in the group are very food adventurous and they're looking for Sephardic recipes. They're excited about the Jewish Italian recipes that I've started to develop. They want Israeli recipes. They're just looking for global flavors. So it runs the gamut. The group is for global Jewish cuisine.
Nice. And I as you know, I always like my guests to share a recipe because I don't think it's fair to make people hungry and not give them instructions. So, is there a recipe that's common or that you love that you like to share, but one that you've had to adapt for people in your group?
Yes, there's many, and I pay attention to what people talk about in the group, especially if they run into certain pitfalls with recipes. So, for example, lately people have been talking about Tzimmes, and so people, which is a carrot dish, usually in a sweet sauce, often made with honey and dried fruit, and frequently served for Rosh Hashanah to welcome the new year and to wish people a sweet new year. But people also like to serve this recipe at Passover as well. And there's no reason why you couldn't serve it throughout the year as a side dish. But people will sometimes write, I'm looking for a Simmus recipe, but so like I want a recipe where the carrots don't get mushy. I want one not quite as sweet. So I really listen to what people talk about in the group and I think, how can I adapt this recipe and give it a modern twist? How can I address these concerns that people run into? So I have a brand new Simmus recipe on my website and I added in parsnips because I really like them. I love roasted parsnips and I decided to roast the carrots with parsnips instead of boiling them to give it a different texture so they wouldn't be boiled. You can also add in sweet potatoes if you like sweet potatoes roasted. But I like the parsnip and the carrots together because they have a similar shape and size. So it's very easy to cut them the same size and roast them the same amount of time. It's just a little bit more of an effort to cut your sweet potatoes into the same size wedges, but you definitely can. And then I wanted to give it a modern twist and give it a little flavor. So I added some Sephardic flavors. So I added Baharat seasoning, which you can buy the blend. They sell it on Amazon. If you live in Los Angeles, there are many kosher markets where you can buy Baharat seasoning, which I have. And if you don't have Baharat seasoning, you can make your own. I have it listed on my website, but it's got ingredients in it like cumin, nutmeg, cinnamon, pepper. It's a really nice, it has nice warm fall seasoning. So I particularly like the dish for fall. And let's see, then when it comes out of, it's also tossed with a little bit of honey. Then when it comes out of the oven, you taste it. If it's sweet enough for you, swell. If it's not, add another tablespoon of honey. We all have our preferences. And then I drizzle some honey on top, which looks really beautiful, and sprinkle some pomegranate and parsley. So it's very colorful. It looks very festive. It's easy to make, and it's a modern interpretation of Simmus. Oh, and actually, I sprinkle some sliced dates so that you get the dried fruit in there as well, which is traditional in the recipe.
Well, most of the thing you mention are like my favorites. I love carrots. I love parsnip. I love sweet potato because I and obviously honey because it like brings everything together. And I think people don't realize that they can use a holiday recipes year round. Is that what you found?
Yes, I think so. And this is a roasted carrot recipe, so there's no reason why you can't have it year round. You could have it for Shabbat. You could have it for a side dish, anytime you'd like. So um, yeah, the flavors are great, and you don't if you enjoy a recipe, I feel like you could have it year round. I mean, I like matzo ball soup. I don't mind having matzo ball soup year round.
Oh, I am with you. Someone asked me the other day, "What's your favorite specific for the high holidays thing?" And I'd say chicken soup, but I probably make chicken soup at least twice a month because it's one of my favorite things. But it's adding the matzo balls that makes it special for the and a little bit different for the holidays. So we all have our favorites, but usually people get really overwhelmed with the holiday meals. They don't think about enjoying them, but just by calling it, carrot casserole, it downgrades it from this thing that has to be that it has all the history behind it, right?
That's true, and I think in everybody's family, there's holiday dishes that they really look forward to, so it becomes that once a year or twice a year treat. But if something is your favorite, there's no reason not to have it more often. I mean, one of my favorite foods is stuffing, a Thanksgiving food. And every time I have it on Thanksgiving, I'm like, I love this so much. We definitely need to make this more often. And sometimes I will rally to make it more times a year, but if it's your favorite, why not enjoy it when you'd like?
Think the stuffing recipe is the stuffing is a really good example because I will do that too. So I'll make it like a month later, and then I'll forget about it for the next 10 months. So
That
if you
that
have
definitely
favorites,
happens.
keep the list, and remember it. Now, you also mentioned that you love Italian food and you do these, what Italian Jewish culinary trips?
Exactly.
So how
So
does that how'd they come about and what why?
thanks, Deborah. So coming from a foodie family, I always had this dream of going to cooking school in Italy. In my 20s, I read an article in Bon Appetit magazine that talked about how you could go to cooking school, you could bring all your friends, and you cook in this villa, for the week. And it just always sounded really inviting to me. And so in 2019, which was with the pandemic just around the corner, but none of us knew, I finally had the opportunity to go to cooking school in Italy for a week after it had been a dream of mine for decades. And when I got there, I was expecting, the full Italian experience, which I got, the ancient city, the fresh fruits and vegetables, pasta and pizza everywhere. But what surprised me is how much Jewish history I encountered while I was there. So
What is it about Italian food that, this Jewish Italian food that is so appealing?
the Jewish Italian food is very Italian. The Jews have lived in this region, or at least are entered the region 2,000 years ago, so it's very influenced by the food of the region. The Jews also influenced Italian cuisine. The Jews were the first in Italy to eat artichokes, eggplants, tomatoes, pumpkins. Some of the foods the Jews brought with them from Spain, and some of the ingredients came from the New World, and the Jews were the first to incorporate these foods into their diet. So people think of an ingredient like tomato as being very basic to Italian cuisine, but it's the Jews who brought the tomatoes to Italy or popularized them in Italy.
That's amazing. So there's all this history, this Jewish history within Italy. So when you go there to explore and to cook, it's almost like food surprises, right? Because you don't realize that that's where it came from.
Yes, and the food in Italy, the Jewish food in Italy is also very Sephardic because many of the Jews in Italy came from Spain. So I met a very interesting woman in Naples, and her family practiced Judaism in secret for hundreds of years. And her family had come from Spain in the late 1400s, and so her food is very Sephardic.
Got it. Oh, absolutely fascinating. And I love it. So you've got the Facebook groups, you do the food tours, but it's all about the Jewish food, right? So what is if there's one tip for Jewish cooking that you had to share, what would that be? What is it people need to know?
I think it's all about following one of two things, either following your heart and remembering the food of your childhood, the food that reminds you of where you come from and your childhood. When you eat that food, it's very emotional, it's very full of comfort. And if that isn't your background, it's about exploring new cuisines, exploring new flavors. And even if you grew up with one style of Jewish cooking isn't actually just one thing. Jewish people live in every corner of the globe, and their food is influenced by the country where they're living. And so there's all kinds of flavors and spices and ingredients when you start exploring global Jewish cuisine. So if you like international food, it's a really fun way to explore global flavors.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Dana, for joining me today. Where could people learn more about you and Dana's Table and all that you do?
Thank you, Deborah. I think the easiest place to find me is at danastable.com because that's where my recipes are, and you'll find links there to my Italy trip and my Facebook groups. But if you're on Facebook, look up Jewish cooking. We're having a lot of fun in there. It's about connecting to other people who love Jewish food. So it's a fun place to be.
And I believe that is where we met. So thank you so much, Dana, for joining me today. And thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube and or your favorite podcast platform. And go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to get recipes like the Tzimmes and read the articles that go with each episodes. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, bon appetit.